Good morning, teachers. We are going to do some exciting work to get you ready to start this school year. This is such a thrilling yet scary time to be a math teacher in Texas. As you know, the state has adopted new TEKS that go into place this year. A lot of changes have been made. We've also adopted a new textbook. We'll have to decide how to best utilize it in light of the new standards. In order to implement these new TEKS, everyone, experienced or brand new, is going to have to delve into them and take the time to really understand what it is that our students are expected to do. After all, we have to provide our students with a clear understanding of what's expected of them. You may have heard the term backward design in some of your summer staff development. This is an approach the district is asking us to take in all core content areas. With all that's new in math right now, it makes perfect sense. Now, I know all this change can seem overwhelming, but we're going to work through it all together, and we're going to support each other along the way. So I want to start off by talking a little bit about backward design and how this fits in with your new 6th grade math TEKS. The two men whose work I'll be referencing are Grant Wiggins and Jay McTighe. In their book, Understanding by Design, they lay out the foundation for this idea of backward design. All right, before I go into specifics, I want you to think about a trip you took this summer. It could be a weekend getaway to celebrate an anniversary, a Disney World trip with the kids, or maybe you got to go somewhere really exotic like a Mediterranean cruise or Jamaica. Now, did you just get in your car and head out and end up in one of these fabulous places? No. My guess is that you picked your destination first and then you made the plans to go along with getting to that destination. That's the same idea behind backward design. Now, this is going to require a bit of a shift in thinking. As we look at planning our units for this year, I want to make sure what we are focusing on is the learning of the students, not what we're teaching. Now, I know that may sound funny. What do you mean we aren't going to focus on teaching? Have you ever gone through a unit with kids and then at the end been disappointed with the results on the assessment? Well, sure, we all have, right? In fact, some people might have even said, "Oh, I taught it. I don't know why the students didn't learn it." Well, obviously, it's our job to make sure they learn it, so that's what we're going to try and see if we can get better at with this backward design idea. When we know our destination, and in this case, that's our specific learning results for our students, we can choose the best travel plans to help them get where they need to be. Now, there are 3 parts to backward design. The first step is to identify what your desired results are. We're going to look at our goals. We're going to see what questions we want students to explore and be able to answer. We want to know specifically what it is that our students need to know and what they need to be able to do. The second step is we have to determine what is the acceptable evidence or what types of assessments evidence can we use to show that our kids are on the right track to where we need them to be in the learning of this topic. This step, we're going to look at all the ways, formal or informal, that we can see that kids are on track to meeting their ultimate goals. And then the final step in this process is to plan the instruction. We're going to plan our learning experiences. We're going to see what activities we're going to do, what type of learning is going to happen in order to get us to the end result. So, instead of planning learning activities first, which is what a lot of us have done in the past, in hopes that we get to our end, we're going to make sure that by beginning with the end in mind, we're going to get our kids where they need to be. Now, I promised you that we were going to work through this together and that I would be here to support you, and that's exactly what we're going to do now. I've explained backward design, and now I want to show you the backward design template. We're going to look at it piece by piece as we work as a group to put backward design into action with your first unit of the year. Now, I asked you to bring your curriculum materials, and I asked you to bring your new math TEs. I want you to take a look at your district plan. The first thing that we're going to be teaching this year in 6th grade is graphing. So that's what we're going to focus on to take a look at this backward design. All right, so let's take a look at the very first step. We're supposed to establish our goals. Take a look at your curriculum documents and look at the TEKS. This part is easy. We're looking at the TEKS. They've already been laid out for us on what it is that we want. So let's look at what those readiness standards are for this unit. We've got 6.6C, Represent a given situation using verbal descriptions, tables, graphs, and equations in the form y equals kx or y equals x plus b. And we also have 6.11a, graph points in all four quadrants using ordered pairs of rational numbers. Now, we just wouldn't want to hand this to students and say, here, this is what we're going to learn. This wouldn't help kids. They wouldn't have a good understanding of what this means. So we're going to break it down a little bit more. We're going to look at what is it that we truly want kids to understand, what are essential questions we want them to be able to answer, what is it that they need to know at the end of this unit, and what is it that they have to be able to do. So, looking at those TEKs, let's talk about the understandings. We want students to understand that rational numbers can be graphed on a coordinate plane, and that situations described in tables can be graphed as ordered pairs on a coordinate plane. All right, so what questions do we need kids to be able to answer? We want them to know how are rational numbers used within the coordinate plane. These kids are going to have to look at positive and negative numbers and fractions and decimals and figure out how they fit in. What do you notice about coordinates in each quadrant? And how can you represent information from a table in a coordinate plane? They're coming to you from 5th grade with a knowledge of quadrant 1. That's all they've had experience with. And so this is going to be some brand new learning for them. We want to make sure that our students get their key vocabulary. You can't talk about a coordinate plane if you don't understand the quadrants, talk about the axes, the coordinates, and they need to understand the characteristics of ordered pairs in each quadrant. What's going to land you in quadrant 1, 2, 3, or 4. So what do we want kids to be able to do at the end of this unit? We'd like them to be able to graph rational numbers, positive, negative, fractions, decimals on a coordinate plane, and to solve problems and make connections to situations represented on a graph and a table. All right, so this is our destination. This is where we're headed with our kiddos. So the next part that we need to look at is how are we going to tell along the way that they're reaching these goals? So that's where we need to determine what evidence we want to use for assessing their learning. And we're not just going to do this with an end of unit test. That's not good enough. We've got to know along the way if they're getting it. If not, we need to monitor and adjust and provide them with the skills so that they will be ready. Because yes, at the end, we'll have a test. But along the way, we want some performance tasks. We want to watch them actually doing something to be able to see their understanding, not just a paper pencil test. But there is time for a paper pencil assessment as well. So let's look at performance tasks first. Now, the district has provided you with some options on what to do, so in looking at those, let's choose what we think would give us the best idea that kids are on track for meeting these goals that we've set. All right, I think those are some good choices, so let's put those on here. Let's do the card sorter. We know if kids can sort into the correct quadrants, we give them these cards with the ordered pairs and they can put them in there and also find the graph that represents that they'll have a good understanding of the objectives. And the shape finder is going to be a little more difficult. We'll have the kids plotting 2D shapes on the coordinate plane and creating a table to go with it. So the students are having to do a little more of the work there. Let's go ahead and put an example in here so that we understand what it is we're looking for. A square with an area of 16 square units was placed on a coordinate grid if one point was located at -1, 2, and if the square is located entirely in quadrant 2, what are the other points? And so the kids would draw that out and then make their table to go with it. Now, as far as other evidence, let's go ahead and looking at the choices. We've got our math textbook. It's a brand new book. It's got some good stuff in it. Looks like there's a nice mid-chapter review here on pages 382 to 384 that would give us a good idea of their thinking. One thing we want to make sure that we include in every unit is some self-assessment. So let's put in a self-assessment. We'll have the kids go back to their shape finder. You'll grade it, but we want the kids to take a look at it and talk about what their process was in finding out where the shapes were and plotting them out. It'll give us a better look into their thinking about this topic. And then the district has created a summative assessment. I've asked you to look over that. I really think it does a better job than the textbook on making sure it has the right level of rigor for the students, and that's going to be really important to make sure we're testing them at the level that we need to. All right, is everybody in agreement with our assessment? So we know these are ways we're going to check along the way to make sure we get to the endpoint we want. All right, so now for the fun part. How are we going to do this? What are our learning activities going to be for the students? Again, the district has given you numerous choices, but it's way too much. It's more than any teacher could do. It's not meant to be something that you just do everything, try to do everything anyway. The district's provided. They're giving you options. We have to look at our students, where they're coming from, what they need, and make sure we pick the best learning activities that are going to give us the results we need. We know vocabulary is a huge issue with our students. So why don't we start with the coordinate graphing foldable and make sure we get those key vocabulary terms. Kids can keep this in their interactive notebooks and then refer back to it throughout the unit. Now we also know that our kids really respond to interactive activities. The more kinesthetic, the better for a lot of our kiddos. We also know from past experience in working with kids in coordinate grids that they get the X and the Y coordinates confused. So the human coordinate plane activity, where students can actually go place themselves on the coordinate plane, will help with that misconception. So let's put that in. You know, as we're looking at tables and putting that on the coordinate plane, if you look at the math text, you know, lesson 14.1 really does a nice job of laying that out for the kids. So I think that would be a good place to incorporate the textbook there. And then you'll learn I love my Kagan activities. So looking at the Kagan activities, again, great ways to get kids engaged in learning, which is what we want to make sure that they're engaged and know why they're learning this. So we've got a couple of Kagan activities, one that works well, plot my point on finding the points, and then the second one that works with the graphing in conjunction with the coordinate grid. All right, now if you take a look at our finished plan, it looks a little overwhelming, and I know it was a little time consuming to do, but we know that we've established our goals, we know exactly what the kids we want the kids to be able to do, and we already know how we're going to assess them along the way. We know which activities we're going to do. So although it may seem like a lot of work up front, it gives us a really clear roadmap of where we're taking these children. So we're not just blindly going through hoping they get to the end result. We've got a clear plan on how to get there. Thank you for all your help today in getting this done, and I look forward to an exciting year.